Magikarp, aka Gyarados, has just hit Pokemon Unite, and we're going to rank every single Pokemon in today's tier list because, after all, it is Monday. On Mondays, we do tier lists, and on Wednesdays, we wear pink.
I manage my department, and I've been doing that for several years now. And, God, I've learned a lot of life lessons along the way.
Your department's just you, right?
Yes, Jim, but I am not easy to manage.
Before I hop into our tier list, I want to shout out our sponsor, G Fuel. That's right, G Fuel is sponsoring the Cowboy. Check out my link in the description or use my promo code spragels for 20% off. You know, G Fuel just brought back Watermelon Mint. They remastered it, and it's back. Now, I have to be honest with you, I wasn't here during the dark times when Watermelon Mint was gone. I'm just finding out about this Watermelon Mint situation now, but I'm happy I'm here when Watermelon Mint is back. Thank you so much, G Fuel. As always, it's a caffeinated beverage, my guys, so it's for people who are 18 plus who need some energy, like your boy here. On to our tier list that has a bit of a different twist this week. Whoa, Jake, what a tier list, you might be saying. Yeah, that's right. This is my tier list from last week here, our Season 17 tier list. And because not much has changed inside of Pokemon Unite outside of Gyarados being added, and we'll have a lot to talk about there, I'm going to keep our tier list the way it is, except I'm going to make some changes to some things that I thought I maybe got wrong, or maybe I overvalued a certain Pokemon, undervalued a certain Pokemon. Of course, I'm going to talk through our tier list right here, but if you just want to take a snapshot of this and you want to leave, by all means, you could do that. There are some things that are going to be moved around a ton about Gyarados. So let's take a look at our tier list right here. We have our God tier. We only have one Pokemon in our God tier every week. We're not friggin' Norse around here. We have our S tier. These Pokemon are turbo broken. We have our A plus tier. They're knocking on the door of S tier. They're really, really great. We have our A tier, just a shy under that. I would say extremely solid picks throughout the A tier. We have our B tier. Ah, dang it. Forgot about that. Yeah, still got the B tier. We have our C tier. These Pokemon are not very good. Our B tier is fine. Not the fact that we have it, just the Pokemon in it. We have our D tier, our Decidueye Memorial tier. These are Pokemon that I would all really like to see buffs for. Then we have our EX tier. These are Pokemon that are banned from ranked this season. However, next season, we don't know whether or not they are banned. We know we have Draft coming to Pokemon Unite, but that means that all of our Pokemon here, Zacian, Mewtwo, plus Miraidon coming to the game, could all be available in the ranked mode, and I think given that Miraidon is coming to the game, they will all be available for ranked. You're just going to have to ban them out if they're broken. But, you know, there's no way Miraidon will be broken, which is funny, because there actually might be a case that Miraidon won't be broken. I highly doubt it. I think it might be the most busted thing that we've seen in Pokemon Unite. Let's take a look at our tier list here really quick, and then let's talk Gyarados. Last week, I put Clefable up into our God tier. It is one of the most broken Pokemon in the game. I'm going to put a different Pokemon in our God tier, but I would be very happy for that to stay Clefable. It wouldn't bother me at all. Our S tier, these are pretty much staple Pokemon that are going to sit in our S tier. I'm going to move 2 Pokemon out of our S tier. I know this is shocking, but I'm going to give you a few reasons why. One Pokemon moving out of our S tier is going to be Slowbro. I don't think Slowbro really has lost that much value inside of Pokemon Unite, but I do think it doesn't feel like it is as broken as it used to be. Competitive, you might see a bit of a different flavor here. It feels like Slowbro now to me sits in the top of the insanely good defender tier, but not so broken that not running it feels kind of criminal. The other 2 defenders, on the other hand, Blastoise for a top lane Pokemon and Umbreon as a defender, do feel like kind of the best things going in the game right now for those roles. The next Pokemon I'm going to move out, and I know I'm going to regret this right away. I'm going to regret this, but I'm going to move Comfey down to our A plus tier. Here's the reason, okay? God, I'm already mad about it. Comfey is the most broken thing inside of Pokemon Unite. However, when the game is relatively more balanced and we don't have Pokemon that are so unbelievably broken at the top of our tier list, Comfey loses some value. Not as much value as people think. In duos and trios, this is still one of the most disgusting things that you can play inside the entire game. However, when a Pokemon like Mewtwo Y, Mewtwo X, Zacian at their prime isn't dominating the meta, Comfey does lose a little value. Not that much, honestly, but it does lose some. I'm moving it down to our A+ tier. Clefable, staying S for sure, could easily be God tier. Dragapult, staying S for sure. One of the most broken Pokemon in the entire game. Competitive play is a little different, but this is for every other player inside of Unite. And then Buzzwole, no question, staying in our S tier. The most broken top laner inside of Pokemon Unite. Just, this Pokemon is so incredibly good. I'm going to move a Pokemon into our S tier. Let's start going through our list right here. Gardevoir, I think, is still doing amazing inside Unite. You could move it down to the A tier if you wanted, just because it doesn't have incredible mobility, but Guard's still doing really, really well. Cram is also doing pretty well, but it doesn't get a lot of play, just for the sake of creating some variety in the tier list. While I think Dive Air Slash, Dive Hurricane's not the worst thing in the world, but while I think Dive Air Slash is still insane, I could see a world where you slide this down into our A tier, and it's not an unreasonable place for Cram to be, especially considering Surf Hurricane really doesn't provide as much value. I'm going to keep Guardy. I'm going to keep Glaceon, which I think is busted. I'm going to keep Mew, even though there's always an argument that Mew could be higher. Inteleon, on the other hand, I'm going to move back up into our S tier. I think Liquidation is much worse. Liquidation's probably like B+ at best. If we had a B+ tier, thank God we don't this week. Thank God. We don't have a B+ tier. But Inteleon, I do think still with Snipe Shot, with how good its Unite move is, especially seeing what it's doing in some competitive gameplay and outside of competitive gameplay, I think Inteleon deserves to sit up into our S tier. I think it's really, really great. Chandelure knocking on the door of it, but I think it's fine here. Both Dodrio and Zoroark, I think, can still hang out in our A+ tier. And now we have to have a conversation about Leafeon. In solo, duo, trio, I think Leafeon is fine in A. In competitive, Leafeon might be the best Pokemon in the game right now. It's up there. There's like 5 Pokemon that are kind of the best Pokemon in the game. There's Umbreon, Blastoise, Buzzwole, Leafeon. Like, these are all like the best Pokemon in the game right now. Leafeon is getting banned so much. I'm going to move it into our A+ tier for this tier list. I don't think it's S in non-competitive play, and this tier list really is based in for everybody playing the game that aren't playing, you know, the only tournaments that are in town, right? I will, I think, make a tournament tier list next week, right before the tournament series kicks off, and you've heard a lot of my thoughts on where most of these Pokemon lie, but I'm going to move Leafeon into our A+ tier just because Solar Blade is absolutely disgusting right now. Dodrio, Zoroark definitely hang out here. None of them are so broken that they make it into our S tier, but they're all very, very good, especially in the hands of really skilled players. Our defenders, Trevenant, staying right where it is. I love Trev. I don't think it's S, but I think it's one of the best in the game. Slowbro, staying there. Lapras, on the other hand, I'm going to move down a tier. Lapras, actually, I think is better than people think. People are not playing enough Lapras right now. Its pick rate's really, really low, but you know, you do have to recognize that it's not the same force that it was in the meta as it was previously. Maybe if everyone starts playing it again, maybe if there's something big that it needs to counter, like maybe if it counters Miraidon really well, we can see this Pokemon rise up in prominence, but I think it's fair to move it down. However, I'm going to move a defender up, and that's Crustle. I think Crustle has been in contention for being this high for a long time, and I think it's very fair to say that Crustle is one of the best defenders inside the game. I think it actually lately has been providing more value I've seen than Lapras, so I would like to move it up a tier. Blissey staying in our A+, Comfey is hanging out here, so is Eldegoss. Wiggly I think is really great, but I'm actually going to move Wiggly down to our A tier. I don't think Wiggly is bad at all. I just don't think it feels like it has the value of like A+, almost S tier broken. A is still extremely good. These are top picks inside the game, but I don't think Wiggly is actually an A+ tier. I think it's just really, really good. Both Blaziken and Mimikyu for me hang out in A+. If I were to shift them around a little bit, I might shift Blaziken down slightly. Competitively, it doesn't seem a lot of play because it needs a lot of experience and doesn't have a big Unite move. But outside of comp play, Blaziken's insanely good. Mimikyu also, I'm in love with. I think it's so freaking good. And it's even getting some competitive play. Taking a look at our A tier right here, we have a lot of Pokemon that are... So here's some interesting ones. Decidueye and Duraludon, I think, are still both A tier choices. However, competitively, Duraludon gets 0 play. So if this was a competitive tier list, you'd drop it all the way down to the bottom, basically. However, outside of competitive play, it's still one of the best auto attackers in the game. It just doesn't get much love. Decidueye, interestingly enough, in comp play, sometimes this is up in A+, and solo queue sometimes is down in B or C. And a lot of it depends on if anyone is blocking for it, because it's the most punishable Pokemon in the game, while also being such a devastatingly powerful Pokemon. I'm not moving it from the A tier. Sylveon, on the other hand, and Espeon, I think I'm moving both to A+. I honestly think the Eevees are broken in the game right now. I think I'm going to move both up into the A+ tier. This might be overvaluing them a little bit, but they evolve at 4. They all do well in Path. They're just all insanely powerful right now. Espeon, probably the most slept on one of the group. But they're all insanely good. So I'm going to move all of our Eevees into the A+ tier right now. The game loves their Eevees, dude. Get ready. If they release Vaporeon, like, it's going to be the most broken supporter of all time. Alolan Ninetales is a weird one. I still feel like Alolan Ninetales is A alongside Cram, Delphox, and Venusaur. However, I do think Alolan Ninetales, if I were to be ranking it, is kind of losing its value most of the 3. It just also doesn't see a lot of play for whatever reason. Delphox, I think, is doing pretty well. Fire Spin is doing well. And then Venusaur is doing well with Solar Beam as well. Solar Beam probably does a little better competitively than it does in solo queue, but it's still really solid. You could even make an argument that Venusaur could be A+. I'll even move it up there for the time being while I think about it. I think that's probably pretty fair. It's an extremely good ranged attacker in the game. Meowscarada hanging out in the A tier, I think, is a reasonable place for this Pokemon as well. It is one of the better speedsters inside the game, and after the buffs it got, I think the only reason it didn't get more play is because it released kind of underwhelming. Lapras, Goodra hanging out here. I think they're both very good. Check out my video on the Goodra effect if you haven't yet. I think Goodra's still a really good Pokemon, but I think it's, you know, it's the reason the Goodra effect is named after Goodra. Wiggly, Mime, I'm definitely keeping A. I put it in the A tier last week, and I really still think it's actually doing very, very well inside the game right now. Hoopa, I'm not changing much. Competitively, it might be a little higher, but I actually think in most other forms of play, it's just a very solid pick, not like an overpowered pick. Our all-rounders hanging out in the A tier, we've got Metagross, Garchomp, Zarina, and Tyranitar. Tyranitar, I think, is way better than people think. I'm definitely keeping it here in the A tier. Zarina is always up and down. High skill, it's great. Low skill, it's terrible. Garchomp is way better than people think. I'm keeping it in the A tier. And then Metagross may be A+. It may be an A+ Pokemon. A feels pretty fair for it. In non-coordinated games, though, it might be A+. This one's close for me. This one's close to moving up a tier. It's extremely good. Down into our B tier. Still got the freaking B tier. It sucks. I wonder when it's going to leave, but I know it won't. Jerks. We still got the B tier. Cinderace, Greninja, great carries, but I do think they're kind of middle of the road inside the game right now. Pikachu, I think this is a fair place to put it. You maybe could put it a little higher. It's not bad at all. And I think it's good as a mage. It's also good as kind of a support mage inside the game. The other speedsters, they're all good. They're not great. They're all good. I think Zeraora might be the best of the group. If any of them were going to move up into the A tier, it's probably Zeraora, who I think is actually one of the more slept on Pokemon inside the game. But they're all fine. Varying levels of fine. Snorlax, Mamo, definitely hanging there. Good, solid choices, but they don't feel like they're as dynamic as some of the other ones. Mamo, for me, like, for my personal preference, I'd put it a little higher, just like because it really suits my play style, but I also think like there are reasons that it couldn't be too much higher. Lucario and Dark Bear are interesting ones. I think if there was a B+ tier, which there isn't, thank God, I would be moving both Lucario and Dark Bear up there. For now, I'm fine keeping them in the B tier. They're both good, though, especially in the hands of a competent player. Dragonite, on the other hand, I think I've been a little unfair with Dragonite. I'm actually going to move Dragonite up into our A tier. Dragonite, I think, Outrage is extremely good, and Hyper Beam is still actually a beast. I think I undervalue Dragonite a little bit because I just don't see it very much. But seeing it in ACL, seeing it in some tournaments here in the West as well, and then playing it for myself a little more in ranked, I'm like, you know what? Dragonite's actually still doing just fine. I'm moving it back up into our A tier. Sword and Azu, I think, are fairly in the B tier. I would actually like to see slight buffs for both of those Pokemon, but I don't think they're bad either, so I can't really put them C. Gengar is Gengar. In the right hands, it's great. And for a lot of players, you're just not going to get a ton of value out of Gengar. And it doesn't do insanely well in this meta. I don't think it's bad if a player's good with it. But in general, it's probably the most underwhelming speedster inside the game. It carries harder than Talonflame does. But its mobility is abysmal. It's very easily countered. It's just a weird one, and I really like Gengar, specifically Hex Gengar, which nobody plays. I'm keeping Water Bear in the C tier. I don't think Water Bear is doing well. In fact, I could move Water Bear down in the Decidueye Memorial tier. The thing is, I can't tell if Water Bear is that bad, or, which is Rapid Strike or Shifu for people who are like, hi, I've never played this game before. Can you stop talking like I know what you're saying? Rapid Strike or Shifu used to be broken, and now it's like not broken. And maybe it's just that it's not broken, okay? But when I've played it a couple times, I feel like it feels not amazing. Our Decidueye Memorial tier, I don't think I'm changing too much inside this tier. All of these Pokemon, I believe, deserve buffs. I'm not saying they're unplayable. The nice thing about Pokemon Unite is I don't think there are any Pokemon that are straight up unplayable, but all of these Pokemon fairly deserve buffs. And I don't really see a point of moving any of them out of there. Sableye competitively is probably the best of this group. Not even probably, it's definitely the best of this group. You can make an argument that Scyther actually does okay as a speedster, and it could be a little higher, but in general, I don't think you could look at any Pokemon inside of our Decidueye Memorial tier and say that they couldn't use some tuning up so that they're more competitive. EX Pokemon are EX Pokemon, and now finally we have Gyarados. I'm going to move it right up into our A tier so we can talk about Gyarados. I said this on my Should You Buy video about Gyarados. It's going to release with a low win rate. It did. Specifically because its early game is rough. People don't know how to play it. Some people try to jungle it, which is absolutely insane. Please don't do that. It has one of the worst jungles. It has probably the worst jungle in the game. Maybe Comfey's worse. Maybe. I'm actually curious to try that. But don't jungle it because you just need to increase your effort gauge, which you do really well in lane, and that's also how you can pick up KOs. So that's exactly where you want to play this Pokemon. All of its moves are varying levels of... So we've got one move that's good, and that's Dragon Breath. That's its good move. And then the rest of its moves are kind of okay. Bounce is okay. Dragon Breath Bounce seems to be like the most popular build, and it has the highest win rate right now. It's also overwhelmingly picked. I think Dragon Breath Bounce and Dragon Breath Waterfall are actually pretty similar, but there's a nice little combination between Dragon Breath Bounce. So you get like a little knock up, which is pretty cool. In general, Bounce, Waterfall, and especially Aqua Tail all need buffs. They all need buffs, or at least quality of life changes for Bounce and Waterfall. Like they're really clunky. The Pokemon, it's very herky-jerky. It just doesn't play fluidly. For a water type, that's a little odd, right? Fluid. For a water type. Are they still laughing? They didn't laugh at all. So I do think that it needs buffs and all those. Its Unite move is sick. Really good Unite move, actually. It could move a little faster. I wish it did move a little faster, but besides that, its Unite move is actually killer. It's a great Unite move. And it probably could use some more... Here, what I would do to make this Pokemon more viable, I would make Waterfall... probably faster, easier to cancel. You could just like back out of it. I would make Bounce cast like Trailblaze does, or if it doesn't cast like Trailblaze does, I would have your shield generate as you're generating Bounce. And then I would also have it so when you're casting Bounce, your camera moves with it. Aqua Tail needs a ton of buffs. Aqua Tail could use so many things. It could attack faster. It could do more damage. You could be hindrance resistance rather than getting canceled out of it. Aqua Tail is actually a disaster. And then once you evolve into Gyarados, I think this Pokemon should actually be a little stronger. Even if you just make that like its defenses are higher and its HP is higher, I think that right in there would take this Pokemon from where it is up into probably an A tier or something like that. Right now, if you're just talking about how it performs inside the game, it's probably B- or C. But because it needs so many buffs and changes, I don't think it's unfair to put it into our Decidueye Memorial tier. There's no question that this Pokemon, like a lot of Pokemon who have been released, a long list at this point. We have a growing list of Pokemon that are pay to lose for the first week. If you buy them for gems, you're paying to lose for that first week or 2 weeks until they end up buffing it. I think we will see some Gyarados buffs very, very soon. And for that reason, I'm going to put it in the Decidueye Memorial tier because it's not performing well. Its win rate is bad and it needs some buffs. However, if you play Dragon Breath, Bounce, or you play Dragon Breath Waterfall, you'll relatively do fine in some of your games. It's kind of like middle of the road. It's like, again, B- or C. It's not super impressive. Its Unite move, on the other hand, is. So I could see it here. I could see it here. But because it's definitely getting a slew of buffs, I don't think there's any reason not to be honest about the state it released in, which is Decidueye Memorial tier levels of not exciting. Now it's time to pick our God tier Pokemon. And you might be shocked, but it's going to be you might be shocked about which Pokemon I picked. I highlighted Clefable last week, which I could still put up there. I think Dragapult in uncoordinated play is a fair choice. Umbreon, Blastoise as well. I'm putting Buzzwole into our God tier. If you know how good Buzzwole is, you'll immediately understand why I'm putting it right here. If you haven't run into great Buzzwoles in lane, you might think, Buzzwole, really? I'm telling you, this thing is one of the grossest Pokemon inside of Pokemon Unite right now. I really think Buzzwole is absolutely insane. So there you go. A little bit of a different take on a tier list. Again, we just recently did one, so I didn't want to like go through the whole placing everything, but I wanted to move some things around. Let me know what you think. Do you think I moved something that I shouldn't have? Are there Pokemon I need to move around some more? I would love to hear from you in the comments. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate you. And now this. Gyarados is insane, dude. Like, when you hit Gyarados, you're unstoppable inside this game. It is the perfect example. It's like what they tried to do with Tyranitar, they finally nailed it with, like, they finally did it. And especially in a meta where Umbreon and Clefable are backing you up, Gyarados is unbeatable. Unbeatable. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I love you. I'll see y'all next time.